Once upon a time, in the quiet little town of Meadowbrook, nestled between rolling green hills and a sparkling blue river, lived a curious young boy named Leo. Leo loved mysteries more than anything. He read mystery books, watched mystery cartoons, and even pretended to be a detective, with his fluffy golden retriever, Rusty, as his trusty sidekick. One evening, as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, a strange thing started happening in Meadowbrook. A mysterious, spooky sound echoed through the town. It was a long, low moan, like a lonely ghost sighing in the wind. Woo! Woo! It went. The townsfolk were puzzled. Mrs. Gable, the baker, thought it was the wind whistling through her new chimney. Mr. Henderson, the librarian, suspected it was a rare species of owl he'd read about. But the children of Meadowbrook had a different idea. They whispered stories of the Whispering Willow, a ghost that was said to haunt the old willow tree by the river. Leo, of course, was thrilled. A real mystery, right here in his own town. That night, tucked in his bed, he could hear the faint woo sound. Rusty whined softly and nudged his head under Leo's arm. "Don't worry, Rusty," Leo whispered. "Detective Leo is on the case. We'll figure this out." The next day, Leo put on his detective hat, which was really his dad's old fishing hat, grabbed his magnifying glass, and set out with Rusty. Their first stop was the old willow tree. It was a magnificent, ancient tree, with long, drooping branches that swayed gently in the breeze. It did look a bit spooky. Leo examined the trunk. He looked at the leaves. He even sniffed the air, trying to smell for anything ghostly. But all he found were a few ants marching in a line and a feather from a blue jay. Rusty sniffed around the base of the tree, wagging his tail, but didn't seem to find any clues either. The spooky moaning continued every evening, right as dusk settled in. The mystery grew, and so did the stories. Some kids said they saw glowing eyes near the willow tree. Others claimed the moaning was getting louder. Leo knew he needed a plan. He decided to set up a stakeout. "A stakeout, Rusty," he explained to his dog, who just tilted his head, "is when a detective hides and watches the scene of the crime to catch the culprit." Rusty barked, as if to say, "Sounds like a great plan." So, that evening, just before sunset, Leo and Rusty hid behind a large bush near the river, with a perfect view of the willow tree. Leo had a thermos of hot cocoa, a bag of cookies for himself, and some dog treats for his partner. They waited, and waited. The sky turned from blue to a deep, velvety purple. The first stars began to twinkle. And then, it started. Whoa, whoa. The sound was closer now, and it definitely seemed to be coming from the direction of the old willow tree. Leo's heart beat a little faster. He held his breath and peeked through the leaves of the bush. But he didn't see a ghost. Instead, he saw two figures tiptoeing towards the tree. They weren't spooky or transparent. They were kids. It was Maya and Tom, two of the older kids from his neighborhood. Leo squinted, trying to see what they were doing. Tom was holding something long and thin, and Maya was carrying a small box. They crouched down near the base of the willow tree. Tom put one end of the long object to his mouth, and then, whoa! The spooky sound echoed through the quiet evening air. Leo's eyes widened in surprise. It wasn't a ghost at all. He watched as Tom blew into what looked like a long, hollow piece of bamboo. Maya giggled and whispered, "That was a good one. They'll all be so scared." Then she opened her little box, and two tiny green lights flickered on. She held them up near the branches, making them look like glowing eyes in the dark. The mystery was solved. It wasn't the Whispering Willow ghost. It was the Whispering Willow pranksters. Leo felt a little disappointed for a second. He had hoped for a real ghost. But then, he felt proud. He had solved the case, just like a real detective. He decided it was time to reveal the truth. Taking a deep breath, he stood up from behind the bush. "Aha!" he said in his most detective-like voice. "Caught you red-handed." Maya and Tom jumped, startled. They spun around, their eyes wide. "Leo," Maya exclaimed. "What are you doing here?" "I'm solving the mystery of the moaning ghost," Leo announced, trying to look serious. "And it turns out the ghost is you two, with a piece of bamboo and some little lights." Tom and Maya looked at each other, and then they started to laugh. Not a mean laugh, but a friendly, you caught us kind of laugh. Okay, you got us, Detective Leo," Tom said, holding up the bamboo tube. "We just thought it would be a fun prank for the town. We didn't mean to scare anyone too much." "We found this bamboo by the river," Maya explained, showing him the little battery-powered lights. "When you blow across the top just right, it makes that spooky sound. And these are just little LED lights from my dad's workshop." Leo looked at the bamboo and the lights. It was actually a pretty clever trick. "Well," he said, "your prank worked. The whole town thinks there's a ghost." Just then, Rusty, who had been waiting patiently, trotted over and started licking Tom's hand, his tail wagging furiously. Everyone laughed. "Look," said Leo. "It was a good prank, but I think it's time to let everyone know the truth. People are getting really scared." Maya and Tom agreed. They hadn't realized how much their little joke had grown. The next day, they went with Leo to the town square. With a little bit of courage, Tom and Maya explained their prank to everyone who had gathered. They showed them the bamboo flute and the little green lights. At first, some people were a bit grumpy, but soon, everyone started to chuckle. Mrs. Gable laughed and said, "Well, I'm just glad it wasn't my chimney." Mr. Henderson, the librarian, was fascinated by the acoustics of the bamboo. The mystery of the whispering willow ghost turned into the funny story of the Meadowbrook pranksters. From that day on, Leo was known as the best young detective in town. He learned that not every mystery has a supernatural explanation. Sometimes, the strangest things have the simplest and funniest solutions. He realized that the real world was full of interesting puzzles, and that a little bit of curiosity and careful observation could solve almost any case. And as he fell asleep that night, with Rusty snoring softly at the foot of his bed, Leo smiled. There were no spooky sounds tonight, only the gentle chirping of crickets. The town of Meadowbrook was peaceful once again, and Detective Leo was already dreaming of his next big adventure.